Hello, Bookworms. Welcome to the Weekend Readers Book Club. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, we are discussing the 2011 released historical romance, adult erotic fiction novel entitled 7 Years to Sin by Sylvia Day. Now, 7 Years to Sin is the story of Jessica and her sister Hester, and two best friends, Alistair and Michael. You see, Jessica was married, but she loses her husband at an early age. Prior to getting married, she encounters Alistair in a erotic rendezvous with another lady, and she can't seem to knock the urge to wonder what Alistair is doing all these years after now being single. Alistair also remembers this encounter and also wonders what Jessica has been up to since her husband has passed away, and they find themselves both on a boat travelling across the seas and giving in to temptation. In addition to this, there is also Jessica's sister Hester, who is in an abusive relationship, but her friend Michael, who is madly in love with her, is trying to narrow the friend zone area to try and get Hester to understand that while she is in an abusive relationship, there are good guys out there, and Michael is one of them. So the book has two stories. The Jessica and Alistair story is the main story. Hester and Michael is somewhat a second undertone story, but they are related because it is the sisters, Jessica and Hester. And the story takes us from the first time Jessica and Alistair meet to when Jessica loses her husband, the boating expedition that they go on, them returning to Hester, everybody finding out that Hester's in a abusive relationship, and, well, to the end, which I'm not going to spoil, but yeah, to the end of the story. Now, with the plot out the way, let's dive into the things that I liked and disliked about this book. Now, I fully understand that this book, I am not the target audience for an adult erotic novel. The target audience is not me. With that being said, I can enjoy some of the eroticness in here, but there is a lot of eroticness in here. And a lot of multiple chapters of eroticness where we go into descriptions of people's penises and vaginas and breasts and just lovemaking, and while a little bit I was okay with, there is a lot of it, and I found myself going, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot to take on, and I don't know if I want to be reading this. So the eroticness of the book was very OTT, and it did take me out of the story a little bit. The story is based in a time of lady and lords. It is one of Sylvia Day's historical romance novels, I believe is the termination she gives this book. And while only reading the back blurb, that sort of gives you an understanding that, okay, yeah, there's some sort of kinky eroticness to this book. It didn't tell me the time period that this book was set, so the first couple of chapters, I found myself just trying to understand what rough time period it is set at in a time of ladies and lords. So it's not a fantasy book, it's just a time period piece from when there were ladies and lords. There was a mindset that I had to get into, but once I overcame that, that was okay. Now, as for the story itself, I absolutely loved the story. The story of Jessica and Alistair, Hester and Michael, they're intertwining. Hester's struggle with her abusive partner, Jessica trying to get over the grief of her late husband, but then fighting the demons in her head in the sense that, yes, there has been enough time passed and yes, she should move on, but is moving on going to be right or wrong? And Alistair just being a gentleman about it. This whole story is absolutely amazing, and I was completely fascinated and blown away by it. Where if you took the eroticness out of it, or just toned down the eroticness, I would have loved this book. But because the eroticness is there, and I found it myself to be OTT, it sort of ruined the story for me, if you can make sense in relation to that. But yeah, the story itself was absolutely great. Now, this is a hard one for me because I really, 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 as I said, loved the story, hated how erotic it got, but could understand that it needs to be a little bit of eroticness to the book, but the level in which it went to, I wasn't enjoying. So, with the question, would this book go on my bookcase? I struggled with it because there is so much I like about this book, and there is just one tiny fact that I don't like, but that tiny fact is a big portion of this book, like, multiple chapters of eroticness. So it isn't going on my bookshelf. However, I'm not actually going to donate this book at this time. I'm actually going to... Do I say this now? Yeah, I'll say it now. Okay. I'm not going to put this book on my bookshelf, and I'm not going to donate it at this time. Sylvia Day, as I said, 7 Years to Sin is part of the historical romance books that Sylvia Day does. And on her website, she has a 4-book series, which is 7 Years to Sin. In addition to that, there is Pride and Pleasure, Scandalous Liaisons, and also The Stranger I Married. I'm actually going to read the other 3 books at a later date, and I want to see if I get some sort of enjoyment from it. Not in the sense that, the eroticness, I'm going to get enjoyment out of it. No, it's more the historic fiction portion of it, where the story of Lords and Ladies I actually enjoyed. And I think this is the first book where I have read, and the timepiece is set at a time of Lord and Lady. So I'm going to go in and have a read of Sylvia Day's 3 other historical fiction novels at a later date, and we'll come back and we'll put them on the Weekend Readers Book Club. And I want to see if it's more, I really enjoy Sylvia Day's writing, or is it, in addition to that, am I a fan of historical fiction? And if so, then it's sort of another avenue I can branch down to, because I've never read a historical fiction book before that, in the time of Ladies and Lords. So it's going to be an interesting experience, and that's coming later this year or early next year. So hold out for that if you want. But yeah, Sylvia Day, 7 Years to Sin. You have not made my bookshelf, but I'm keeping you around just for a little experiment. So, as a custom here at the Weekend Readers Book Club, as one book closes, another book has to open. And it is now time to find out what the Weekend Readers the next readers, and we can confirm that we are going to be reading The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Now, this book seems to keep on jumping up on the monthly Goodreads best books to read, and also the New York Times bestseller. And I don't know anything about the story, so I'm going into this blind, but the cover is sort of striking, and I was like, you know what, I'll give that a whirl. So I'm going to start The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and hopefully this should be an entertaining read. Hopefully it's not an erotic fiction, because I don't know how I would handle 2 of those back to back, but in saying that, that is our next read for the Weekend Readers Book Club. So that there, Bookworms, concludes our episode today for our recap and discussion of Sylvia Day's 7 Years to Sin, the book that I absolutely loved storyline for, but hated for the amount of eroticness it is. But again, it is an erotic novel, or it's an adult erotic novel literature. I don't know what the correct terminology of this is supposed to be. I am not the target audience. I fully am aware of that. But I would say if you've got Sylvia Day's 7 Years to Sin, or even probably any of Sylvia Day's books, and you're on the fence whether to read it, I'd say give it a go. Even if you are a guy and it's not your target audience, you might find that you're pleasantly surprised with her writing style and the ability to quickly adapt onto characters, as I did with, Jessica and Alistair and Hester and Michael. As always, you can find us on Instagram. We are at Weekend Readers Book Club. We are also on YouTube and Spotify, The Weekend Readers. Until next time, Bookworms, thank you for joining us, and happy reading.